Unfortunately, we've seen quite a few instances over the years of QBs absolutely crumble under the pressure of playoff football.
Andy Dalton had just tossed his third interception of the game in his homecoming.
Winning football games, especially once the postseason rolls around, often comes down to whether or not a team's signal caller is ready to rise to the occasion. So, how about we take a look back at the 10 worst postseason quarterbacks in NFL history? Tony Romo. For a decade, Tony Romo was the face of the Dallas Cowboys. Well, as much as the face of the Cowboys as any player can be, considering Jerry Jones isn't one to give up the spotlight easily. But in any case, for a while, it felt like he might finally bring America's team back to glory. He emerged from anonymity out of Eastern Illinois to notch 4 Pro Bowl selections, put up gaudy stats, and had the arm and mobility to make highlight reel plays. The guy made it look real easy, at least in the regular season. But come playoff time, the Romo coaster went off the rails. I mean, sometimes quite literally, like when he ran off to Mexico. But that's a story for another time. 6 trips to the postseason, and he managed just 2 wins. As if that resume wasn't bad enough, he also has the stinky cherry on top, which came in his first playoff appearance during his breakout season, the one that really set the tone for the rest of his career. Of course, we're talking about that botch snapped against Seattle in the 2006 wildcard game, the one that is forever seared into Cowboys fans' memories. Throughout his career, Romo had moments where he kept Dallas in games, but he could never find the strength to get them over the hump. And with such a low nadir and high expectations, it only feels right to start this list off with him. Chad Pennington. While some bitter Jets fans might not admit it, there was a lot of good things about Chad Pennington as a football player. Let's call a spade a spade. Pennington had the heart of a warrior. The only problem is that, he didn't quite have the arm strength to match it. He was all heart, akin to a Rudy Gun Pro, twice earning NFL Comeback Player of the Year after grueling injuries to put up some real solid regular season numbers during his career, and win a lot of games. But when the calendar flipped to January, his underdog charm ran out and his production bottomed out. 6 playoff games, only 2 wins. 8 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. And let's not forget the way he'd fade as the stakes got higher, like in 2006 against the Patriots when his Jets were thoroughly dismantled. Or in 2008 with the Dolphins, his final postseason appearance when he surrendered 4 interceptions and they got embarrassed by Baltimore. Pennington was gritty, sure, but playoff success always seemed to evade him. Rex Grossman. Oh, Rex Grossman, the quarterback who somehow rode the Bears defense all the way to the Super Bowl in 2006 while doing everything in his power to derail them along the way. Man, the defense that year was something special. If they had even a halfway decent signal caller, the Lombardi Trophy would have landed in the Windy City for sure. But Grossman saw to it that Bears fans' misery continued. Grossman's playoff stats read like a horror story for Chicago fans. 5 interceptions in 4 games, a passer rating that could barely find its way out of the 60s, and a knack for crumbling in big moments. His postseason lowlight reel peaked in Super Bowl 41 against the Colts, where he fumbled a snap, threw 2 killer interceptions, and looked entirely out of his league. Chicago's defense and special teams dragged him to that Super Bowl. Grossman just happened to be along for the ride, and when it came down to it, he ruined it for the rest of his teammates. Andy Dalton. The Red Rifle was a gunslinger during the regular season with all those offensive weapons on the early 2010s Bengals. But come playoff time, Andy Dalton might as well have been firing blanks. A truth that the heartbroken Bengals fans know all too well. 4 playoff appearances, 4 playoff losses, just 1 touchdown against 6 interceptions. You can set your watch to it like clockwork. And if there's one game that encapsulates Dalton's postseason struggles, it's that infamous 2011 wildcard loss to the Texans. 3 picks that felt more like a funeral procession than a playoff game. For a guy who led Cincinnati to 5 straight playoff berths, Dalton's inability to win in January became the cruel punchline of his career. The real shame of it is that those Bengals teams had talent, but Dalton's postseason failures held them back every single time. And now, with the twilight of his career hanging on by a thread as a backup at the Panthers, it looks extremely unlikely that he'll ever get a chance to change the narrative around his career. Randall Cunningham. Randall Cunningham was a human highlight reel, a quarterback ahead of his time with the kind of athleticism that made defensive coordinators lose sleep. But when it came to playoff football, Cunningham looked far more mortal. Not too dissimilar to what we've seen play out with Lamar Jackson in recent years. 9 playoff starts, just 3 wins. Cunningham's career postseason numbers, 12 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. Yeah, unfortunately, that doesn't tell the full story of his struggles. He just looked like a different player out there. The most painful moment, ironically, came in one of his better performances, and his last playoff game, the 1998 NFC Championship game against the Falcons. The Vikings were 15-1, an absolute juggernaut, but Cunningham in that offense froze up at the worst possible time, and Minnesota lost in overtime. Just like that. For all his talent, Cunningham really never found a way to conquer the postseason stage. Brian Sipe. Brian Sipe played just 1 postseason game, unsurprisingly for the Cleveland Browns. But it was so terrible that we had no choice but to include him on this list. You see, his performance in the 14-12 loss to the Raiders was just that bad. Which really is a shame. He was actually a solid signal caller in his day. Even won league MVP honors in 1980, throwing 30 touchdown passes and becoming just the 3rd quarterback to eclipse 4,000 passing yards in a season. But during the postseason that year, he absolutely melted down, going 13 for 40 with 3 interceptions, with the final one getting snagged in the end zone, with Cleveland a field goal away from taking the lead in the closing minutes. TJ Yates. Okay, take this one with a grain of salt, because in TJ Yates' defense, he wasn't even supposed to be out there for the Houston Texans. The team just ran into some really bad luck in 2011. Both their starter and backup, Matt Schaub and Matt Leinart respectively, suffered season-ending injuries. So by the time it got down to old Yates, it was truly dire straits. Then came the divisional round matchup against the Baltimore Ravens. Yates? He looked every bit like the inexperienced rookie that he was, throwing 3 back-breaking interceptions while again failing to throw a touchdown pass. Jeff Garcia. Jeff Garcia was the ultimate underdog story. Undrafted out of San Jose State, he clawed his way to NFL relevance after a successful stint in the CFL. But by the time he landed in the NFL, he had already proven that he could win. But his knack for grinding out regular season victories didn't always translate to playoff glory. In 6 starts, he was only 2-4 with 7 touchdowns and 7 interceptions to go along with a passer rating of 73.8. A far departure from the standard that he worked so hard to establish on his regular season resume. Which made it all the more frustrating is that he was basically the Kirk Cousins before Kirk Cousins. You know, the kind of quarterback that could excite you just enough to break your heart when it mattered most. Neil O'Donnell. Steelers fans will never forget Neil O'Donnell, but not in the way you'd hope for a quarterback who led their team to a Super Bowl. But instead, his legacy in Pittsburgh is defined by one of the most infamous performances in postseason history, Super Bowl 30. Alright, let's roll it back and set the stage. It was 1995, and O'Donnell had quietly put together a very solid season, guiding the Steelers to a 10-6 record and their first Super Bowl appearance in over a decade. The problem was O'Donnell was really no more than a journeyman, and when the postseason arrived, the man really struggled to deliver. In 7 starts, O'Donnell went 3-4 with 9 touchdowns and 8 interceptions, with the aforementioned meltdown in Super Bowl 30 as the absolute low point. O'Donnell threw 2 crucial interceptions when his team still had a chance to win. Both passes landed directly in the hands of Dallas cornerback Larry Brown, who wasn't even covering a receiver on either play. Brown went on to win Super Bowl MVP thanks entirely to O'Donnell's mind-boggling mistakes. Those turnovers weren't just costly, they were catastrophic, turning a close game into a 27-17 Cowboys victory, and landing O'Donnell on our list of worst postseason quarterbacks of all time. Kirk Cousins. If there's one thing Kirk Cousins is known for, it is putting up big numbers in the regular season and even bigger question marks in the postseason. Cousins is the king of 1 p.m. kickoffs, where he can carve up defenses and rack up stats. But when the lights get brighter and the games matter more, his performances tend to wilt faster than a bouquet in the desert. The issue with Cousins in the postseason isn't just the numbers, though. It's the way that he plays in big moments. Take the now infamous checkdown in the final seconds of the 2022 wildcard game game against the New York Giants. That play perfectly encapsulates his postseason struggles. Timid decisions, playing it safe, and coming up short when the stakes are highest. For all his talent and gaudy stats, Cousins remains one of the most polarizing quarterbacks in the NFL. Fans and analysts alike are left asking the same question year after year. Can he ever rise to the occasion when it matters most? So far, the answer has been a very frustrating no. And based off of what we saw from him during his first season in Atlanta coming off that Achilles injury, unfortunately, it seems like he has cemented himself as the poster child for playoff underachievement. But hey, which NFL quarterback do you think was the worst in postseason history? Who do you think we're right on? Who do you think we're wrong about? Was there anyone that we may have missed? Let us know in the comment section below. If you liked this video and learned a thing or two, then clicking the like button helps us out a ton. And you know, we really appreciate it. If this is your first time coming around to TPS though, then subscribing is a great idea because we put out videos like this every single day. But as always, thanks for watching and we'll see you guys next time.